Hello and welcome everyone. Today we have a special guest with us. At the show, we are going to talk with some person who has a trip to four countries in the Middle East and with a wonderful and different experience. Uh, Today we have Leila with us. Hello, Leila, and welcome to our show.
Hello there. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you. And first of all, I want to say that I hear that you can speak multiple language. How many language you can speak?
Well, right now I'm actually fluent in seven languages,
Seven.
which, yes,
Okay.
which, which is a bit weird for some people. But if I tell you that at seven I was reading Kafka in French, it might give you an idea. That is something that, well, I started from a very early age, very young age, and it was a bit nurtured by my mother as well. So I can speak fluently seven languages at the moment.
Can I ask which languages?
Yes, yes, sure. So it's Portuguese, Spanish, French, Italian, Persian, Arabic, and Turkish.
Okay, so we will back to this one and ask you about that one. So at the first, can you introduce yourself, who you are, and then we will go to that trip part.
Sure. So I'm Leila and Diogo as well, because
Mhm.
I have like two personalities. At the time of my trip, I was Diogo mostly, and
Mhm.
we'll talk about that later. But what I do, I actually have a master's degree in international relations and political science. I am someone that is working right now in the financial sector. I was also managing my own company in the last months, which is a company that deals mainly in immigration and investment to in Portugal for citizens of Middle Eastern countries. And well, right now at the moment, I am in the UK and I'm dealing with the cold weather here, which I hate because all Mediterranean people just come here to make money. The weather is awful; it's depressing. But well, it's what it is. It's what it is. Until we can actually find a way of having proper management and governance in the Mediterranean basin, we need to stick with this.
Have you ever been in a Scandinavian country?
I don't want to.
No,
I,
so because you said that the weather is depressing.
yeah, like I want to see the Northern Lights and come back. That's it.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, the Romans, they had this thing called the olive line, which is like they said that any place above the olive line, which is more or less the south of France, it would be
Mhm.
barbaric territory. They wouldn't really feel the need to go there. So yeah, I basically live my life according to the olive line.
Yeah. Good for you. Okay. So, just want to be sure. Is it okay if I want to continue with the Layla?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So, Layla, which countries have you met for your trip?
So I had this particularly long trip, which was supposed to last for 2 weeks, and it lasted for 2 years. What happened was that I had the opportunity of visiting Turkey,
Mhm.
Syria, also Armenia, Georgia, and Iran. It was a pretty interesting trip because it developed, it was not planned, it just developed and happened as a bunch of coincidences that were kind of intertwined together in a way. But the thing is, it was an experience mainly about people. You know, I didn't go there to see the mosques or to see the beautiful buildings. It was an experience of people. It was an experience of hitchhiking. It was an experience of dealing with what I call the biggest treasure in the Middle East, which is the warmth of the people and the way people actually treat the guests, which is something I
Mhm.
couldn't find anywhere else in
Okay.
the degree that I found there.
So, as you said, it wasn't that kind of the planning at the beginning. So it just happened
It just
next.
happened. It just
Okay,
happened.
nice. And it's so important. You're gonna be open for that kind of the situation. That's a good one.
Yes, I mean, I think you can get very far with a smile on your face, you know, because some people believe that the human race is inherently bad, evil, and that's not the experience I've been having so far. I think people are, they might not be doing the best, but it's because they don't know any better, not really because they don't want it.
Beautiful point of view. Because some people they consider no, they're racism. So that was interesting point.
That's not my experience. I used to believe to think like that, but that's not my experience.
Okay. So can I, you said that Turkey, Syria, and all the countries they are, I think, they kind of think the neighbors. I
Yeah.
mean, all of them, and they are in the Middle East. So why Middle East? Is there kind of the reason, or it just
Yes,
happened?
there is a reason. There is also, it's the same reason actually, for which I actually chose my name as Leila. I grew up. I'm a '95 child, so I'm a child of the '90s. I grew up listening to the news, and the news at the time that I was getting old enough to actually perceive and understand what was going on with the world was 9/11, 9/11, 9/11, 9/11, 2001, 9/11. There was another reason. When I was very small, one of the first memories I have, one of the things that I can recollect from that time was actually going to, we call it feira in my language, but it's like a bazaar, like this open market on the street where people sell vegetables and fruit with my aunt. And she bought me a little tape. So we used to have those pirate tapes,
Mm.
of Aladdin. And it
Aladdin.
was, yeah, it was the first movie I've watched. It was Aladdin. And I said, I don't know what's happening, but I want that. I don't know exactly what this is about.
At the what age you watched the first?
I think I was 4 or 5. Like it was before. Yeah, it was before
Oh,
school. Yeah.
okay.
And I said, yeah, I don't really know what's going on here, but I really, really want to experience this environment. And it just stuck with me. I mean, nobody else in my family actually had this interest or tried to even do anything with it. So it was kind of, and I've heard this from other people, but it was kind of a huge difference between the world that I had seen in Aladdin and the world that I was seeing in the aftermath of 9/11. And if you go to the first song, I think it's called Arabian Nights. Yeah. If you go to the most watched video on this song, Arabian Nights, on YouTube, one of the comments is actually one of the top comments. It says, back when the Middle East was associated with something exotic and not immediately associated with terrorism. And I said, this is my Middle East. This
Mm.
is my Middle East. Because, I mean, Aladdin was not about what I saw on the news. I said, this cannot be the same place. I mean, it doesn't go from, I know Aladdin is a myth, or is something actually that's not real, but it's based on a mythology. It's based on an idea that was my idea of Middle East, that I wanted to be my idea of Middle East. And it was in stark contrast to what I was watching on the news. War and everything, everyone bombing, everyone killing each other. So I said, yeah, I I am not going to accept this. I need to find out. I need to see it, because I believe this Middle East still exists. And well, I didn't have the opportunity until I was 21. So I waited for a long time. And meanwhile, I was developing the only thing I consider myself really decent at, which is learning different languages. My mother found out that I had this ability to learn languages quickly from a young age, and so she started developing that on me. She taught me French when I was 7. I also learned Spanish when I was 4. And then, of course, English, Portuguese, Italian followed. And then I said, why not? Let's start learning languages to go to the Middle East. And I started learning Turkish.
Mm.
It was, why Turkish? Because when I was in university, I actually heard someone speaking Persian.
Uh huh.
And I asked, where are you from? And he said, I'm Turkish. And
Okay.
he was speaking Persian because he was actually from Azerbaijan.
Uh huh. Okay. Yeah.
And I said, oh, see, I like that language. Now I'm going to learn Turkish. And I did it. But, but then I realized it didn't sound anything like what he was saying.
Mhm.
and I had to learn Farsi, of course.
Yeah, yeah, it's a border between the Arabic and Turkish. Yeah, we are.
So it was like the beginning of my journey in the Middle Eastern languages, and it was actually the moment when I decided, okay, this is the time I need to go and see it for myself.
So at 22, so around 15 years, you had the time to just develop your plan.
Exactly.
Nice. And when you had a plan to go there, that was the time you already knows the Turkish, or you when you went there, you.
No, I actually was starting to read some things about Turkish at that time because I already had an interest in learning the language, but it was not something that I expected because Turkish is really hard. Like,
Really?
yes, Turkish for us, for Latinos, is
Uh huh.
really hard. It's an oral Altaic language, so if you're not used to changing everything in your life and the grammar is completely, it's even hard for Persian speakers because they speak an Indo-European language like we do in most countries in Europe. But Turkish is a different animal.
Hmm.
So when I went to Turkey, I actually volunteered for a project, and I went with the idea of developing my Turkish. I knew some basic sentences, I knew some things, but the idea was that I'd actually developed Turkish in Turkey, and it was probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my life.
Okay, so Aladdin, it was your inspire. Okay, but the interesting because it's a coincidence. Maybe you watch a movie, it's a kind of the Arabic
Yeah,
background, but you
it's
went.
supposedly set in Baghdad.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And also, then you think you're hearing the Persian, but it was a Turkish, so everything.
Yeah, because actually the idea that we have of the Middle East in the West, if you don't go and search a little bit about it, is completely wrong. I mean, most people you talk to in Europe, they think that in Iran they speak Arabic, which is,
Yeah, exactly.
you know.
Yeah, this is.
Uh, and also there is this layer of Islam over the Middle East, which people think is the old story. But if you go,
Mhm.
you see that only in Iran you have what, like 8 different religions, 9.
Yeah.
But in Iraq, you have like 5, 6 different religions, all of them older than Islam. So if you start peeling this layer of whatever we created to simplify the concept of Middle East, and I'm talking about people like Gertrude Bell, I'm talking about people like T. Lawrence that actually work closely with the Arabs and dedicated themselves to study the Middle East. They already knew that this Middle East existed, but in terms of simplifying it geopolitically, they were not heard or their voice was not strong enough to actually create this image of the Middle East that we have in the West. And the image we use right now is a geopolitical construct, and it's completely wrong. I mean, it's not a Muslim region per se, it's a region of multi faiths, it's a region of several languages, it's a
Hmm.
region of several peoples, and the way they connect and the way they interact with each other is much, much deeper and older than what we expect here in the West or anything that we actually know.
Mm. And I want to confess something. According to my experience, when I came here, uh, I'm talking about this. Not all of them, but the place I'm living. For them, when we talk about the Asian, Chinese or Japanese, they are Asian.
Yes.
So when I explain, you know that the Iran is from the Asia, but when they say Asia, they means Chinese, Japanese, Vietnamese, or something. And also because Iran and Iraq, they only everything that they pronounce is the same except the last part. So Iraq and Iran. And when you
Yeah.
say it fast, you say, "Oh, Iraq," and say, "No, no, no, Iran."
Iran, yeah.
So there, yeah. And they say, okay, so you speak
Yes.
Arabic? And say, no, we speak Persian, Farsi. So for them, it's a kind of the lack of geographic knowledge. Maybe for them, Asia is that part, and we are Arab. The rest is Arab. So yeah,
There is something else that I noticed. Like when I told people, there are no deserts in Turkey, and they don't have camels in Turkey. They were like,
exactly, exactly. It's many, many, many years ago, Turkey. I mean, the Turkey, Iran, Afghanistan, some part of this kind of the Arabs countries, uh, uh, like Iraq, or they were in the same border.
mhm.
So right now in Iran, for example, we have the people there speaking Arabic, they speaking Turkish, they speak
Which,
Kurdish. Yeah, different. And even when you go to the, you know, when you are close to the border, for example, when you go to the Turkey, but close the region is close to the Iranian border, so it's gonna be they can speak or they can understand
of
a
course,
little Persian. Or when you go to that type of the Iraq, like the Kurdistan, or say they can understand. But as much as you're gonna be far from the border, they're gonna be pure Kurdish, Arabic, or the Turkish. So yeah, the history is so common. So even once someone when I was talking with my friend with Parsi, and someone came to me and say, what's language you are speaking? This is not Arabic because I know the Arabic. He said,
yeah,
yeah. So what's the language? I said, this is Farsi, and it's that's kind of the lack of knowledge. Maybe it's happened,
yeah.
and I have the experience.
I mean, they are so different when you get used to it. In terms of grammar, in terms of sounds, they are completely different.
Yeah,
You know.
for them because Arabic and Farsi they have the same alphabet. So you're writing Arabic. No, this is not.
Yeah,
The alphabet is the same, but
completely different.
yeah, this is the right now we don't have a problem to alphabet. So you start from the Turkey. Let's go to the
Yes.
Turkey. How at the 22 you said that you went there.
20, actually 21 when I arrived there.
No, I mean your age.
I was 21
21. Okay,
when
so
I arrived. Yes,
okay.
my birthday party from 21 to 22 was like one of the wildest things that I've ever witnessed in my life because I I was very it was very fast to make really good friends in Turkey. So actually, one of my friends wanted to surprise me, and he closed a club. He closed the whole place in Istanbul. Yes, and the place was called Eski Beirut. Now it doesn't work anymore. And it was my birthday party.
Wow.
Uh, yeah, it was incredible. It was incredible. Like we had almost 200 people attending. Maybe more.
Oh, okay.
Mm.
They were surprising you. It's a huge
It
party.
was it was incredible. It was like the prime of my life so far. That
They love
and
you. They
at
love you.
the time I was dating a miss. She was quite well known as well, quite high profile there. So I got to experience a little bit of a life that I didn't even know existed.
Okay, that was a very different welcoming party. So
It was impressive. It was great. I'll
okay,
never forget it.
good for you and good for her. I'm looking for that kind of difference. Okay, at the Turkey. So you went there as a kind of for a volunteer job. You said yes.
Yes.
Okay. So what was the first? When I say shock, I don't want to say negative or positive.
Mhm.
But what was the different cultural shock for you?
There is something I like in the Middle East. People usually say that why do you like it here? Because you're European and Europe is
Mm,
developed. A lot of money in Europe, but we lost a lot of things in Europe. I mean, people don't see it with the eyes I see, maybe, but I was raised in a conservative family. I was raised in a very family oriented environment in a small village. And the truth is that you have something in the Middle East that we lost in Europe mostly, which is values and honor. You know, people have this concept of loyalty, which is completely different from Europe. I mean, having a friend in the Middle East is a very serious thing. And having a friend in Europe is more like having an acquaintance. And I never really identified with that. When someone in Turkey is your friend, they will go above and beyond to help you. And in Turkey, when someone says they are your friend, sometimes they don't even come to have dinner with you because they are at work. I've had people in Iran that actually took days off just to be with me. They
mm,
took days off just to take me around. And the concept of friendship and the concept of human contact, the concept of respect for the elderly people, the concept of respect and serving your community, the concept of helping the people in need. I think you guys have that down in a way that we are not really even imagining in Europe.
Some people in my country they think that's not good. They looking at the same stuff in a negative way. You know, what does it mean that when you say thought of? It's we cannot explain it for the European. When you want something, but you should say you don't want it, but I should. What can I say that resist that? Please, please, it is it. So right now, there is some kind of the, I don't know, mix or I, 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 I I'm not sure what type of the word I can find with that kind of the uh, Western and Eastern culture together. They have communicated, but for the Eastern people, especially in my country or that area, they think we should do exactly like the European people. When you, why should be, as you said, that the honoring the someone else. So we are more important than anyone in the world. So
Hmm.
first me, then someone else. You went to the Turkey. How was Turkey?
Turkey was incredible. I mean, from the first second, I loved it. You know, the night I arrived in Turkey, my the person that was about to host me, he called me and he said, "Okay, I cannot get there. There is a problem." And Turkey is known for having this kind of problems. You know, there is a problem. There was like how do you call it, coup d'état?
Yeah.
You know,
Hmm.
and actually, I cannot go and
It
pick
was a
you up.
military that year.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I cannot go and pick you up. And I said, okay, what should I do? Well, just find a way to get here.
So it was a year, I think, 2017
17,
or 18, when the
yes,
military start the attack to the airport and tried.
something like that. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, I remember. That the point is, in that day I was at the airport.
Oh,
Yeah,
damn!
but I was, yeah, I had a flight back to the Helsinki, so I
It was it
remember
was
that.
it was
I was so
hellish.
lucky.
But
I was so
actually, it's something about Istanbul. Like you get so used to that kind of things happening that you just don't care anymore. You know, it's weird if you're a foreigner coming from an organized country. But if you are actually living there, it's like, oh, again, okay, it's a Friday, you know. so yeah, so it was my welcoming, my reception to Istanbul, and I actually found a way to meet him. And later in the night, we actually went out for some tea, as if nothing was happening. So I was actually I went to I was staying at his place, and I met his family. They were very welcoming, and I thought, okay, they are welcoming because I'm a foreigner, and it's the first time they have a foreigner here. But then I ended up realizing that everyone was like that. I mean, it's something called misafir perverlik, like the way of welcoming the guest in Persian is called mehmonawazi,
mm,
and
hospitality.
hospitality exactly in a different way that we practice it in Europe. And then I started feeling myself completely at home. I like the food. I like the people. I like the culture. I liked it so much that I felt more at home than in my own country. And I ended up making friends and understanding the real meaning of friendship. Like having a Turkish friend is something very, very serious. You are expected to do things for them as they are expected to do things for you that you would never even consider doing in Europe. And then I went a little bit too deep in my adventure and I got too involved with Turkey. They were actually joking that I should get a Turkish passport just for what I was doing. But I was very involved in some causes in Turkey, and I started meeting some very interesting people, not just in Istanbul, but also in the Kurdish region of Turkey.
Hmm.
And I kind of fell in love with the country and got very much acquainted with the ins and outs of Turkish politics and the way that things are done in Turkey.
Okay. What was the most interesting thing for you? The-
Um, it was actually something very simple. The way that people would just randomly out of nowhere, they have something called the Akbil, which is like this small card that you pass whenever you want
Uh,
to metro. People just randomly do it for you, like for no reason at all, because they just wanted to. Like they would do it twice and they would say it's for me and for that gentleman over there. And a lot of people will do that. So I think it's a way of practicing zakat, or
Hmm.
sadaqah. But in a way, it was weird for me because it just provided a sense of community that was a feeling of community that was different. Another thing, I was working in a school when I first started. I was kind of doing some tutoring in a school, and the way that the students showed respect to the teachers was something completely alien to me. I mean, everyone stood up, they sang the national anthem. The way they respect teachers and the way they treat you as a teacher is completely unbelievable. I mean, there is nothing like that in Europe.
Hmm.
Another thing that I noticed in Turkey that was very weird to me because, well, I'm Iberian, I'm Portuguese, so the way people treat gypsies in Turkey is completely different from the way the people treat gypsies in Iberia.
Hmm.
Like
How way?
In Iberia, they are treated as outcasts, and in Turkey, they are somehow. I wouldn't say they are necessarily respected, but they are actually seen as valid members of society and someone performing a job. For example, I remember this lady. She actually gave some money to a gypsy. She was not even asking for it. She just went there and gave her money. And I said, "Why did you give her money? I mean, I just wanted to
To
understand that."
understand, yeah.
And she said, "Because they work a lot and they have a shitty life." Yes, which is completely different from the approach people have in Portugal and Spain. I mean, we are completely racist or thought to be racist against towards the gypsy community. And in Turkey and in the Middle East, people actually feel somehow proud of that. For example, in Iran, you have the Kuli, and a lot of people love being Kuli. They think they are the best musicians and they are someone that's related to freedom and arts. It's a completely different view from the same things.
Mm, interesting. So it's interesting when I'm talking with you because you're looking that point that for us we cannot see it because it's we can say okay it's normal, but when you mention that part and say yeah we have that sometimes even we are when we don't need anything we just buy something to just help that guy he was or the lady she's or he's trying to sell.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand. So the people and the hospitality. What about the food?
Well, the food, I love it. When I when I moved to Turkey, I was actually a vegetarian. Yeah, so
They changed you?
not anymore. Yeah, I mean the first time I tried to resist for the first couple days, but then they put something called Iskandar kebab in front of me. Yeah, I said no. Life's too short for this shit. So when it was like, it's okay, you can do it. Then the guy starts pouring the butter, like the melting. Oh my god, like boiling butter on top of the meat, And I was like, okay, it's over. I give up. I love Turkish food. Actually, I love the food in the Middle East in general. I see there's a huge difference between the food there. And there is something else I noticed actually, something that for you is probably completely normal, but for me was a shock. It was the first shock I had there. It was in the airport. There was an Iranian guy, and he was speaking in English with a Turkish guy. And I don't know why it shocked me so much, but I was like, why are these guys speaking in English? Because I mean, they have been neighbors for like, almost 600, 800 years now, and they don't have a common language, even though the Ottoman language was actually quite similar to Persian. But now they use English to communicate between each other. I don't know why it was weird for me, but it was because, as you know, Portuguese and Spanish and French and
Mm-hmm.
Italian,
Mm.
Romanian, they are quite similar. I mean, they are almost mutually intelligible in the way that you can actually speak in your own language and understand what the others are saying. But I don't know why I kind of expected to be like presented with some sort of pidgin or some sort of common language in the Middle East,
You were
but
expecting that one?
like they would speak a common language. I don't know why, because of the Silk Road and all the years living together and all the trades between Turkey and Iran and Syria, but they don't. They speak English. It's weird.
Um, because if we want to back to this old century, Turkish and the Farsi, the Arabic. I don't want to miss anything. Turkish, Arabic. I'm just talking about that area. So
Yeah,
Turkish, Arabic, or yeah, and the Farsi. From beginning, of course not from the Adam and Eva. Not that, but they were different culture and different. Even when they were in the same border, they were in the different languages. So we, because of that, unfortunately, we have something like the Pan Turkish, Pan Arabis, and
yeah.
Pan Farsis, Pan Iranis. So they were in the same border, but totally different language. But um, we have some common words. For example, the even sometimes I'm heard it from the Indian or the Bengalis,
Yeah.
like the ish, like the I don't know, that kind of the stuff. There are some part they have some common word, but yeah, we cannot understand each other.
It's interesting because if you think about the Silk Road, I mean, you were forced to trade with each other for centuries. I know that people in Turkey they usually spoke the same language that, at least until the Soviets came. The languages from Turkey to China they were more or less the same. They were Turkic languages, and then they started diverging after the Soviets. But the fact that there was no common language between the
Mhm.
Persian Empire
No,
and the Ottoman Empire, that's pretty
unless
weird.
if you're living or born in the Turkish area, like Azerbaijan or your Tabriz, or yeah, even I'm not very mm, expert for that one, but I know sometimes even there is a different type of the Turkish. So they are speak for someone like me that I don't have any idea about the difference. I say, okay, you are speaking Turkish, and for them, say, no, this is Istanbul Turkish. This is
Yes, I'm not any Turkish. Yeah,
yeah. So
yeah,
for
yeah.
us, for someone like us, it's gonna be Turkish, but for them, it's so different. Okay, so how long have you stayed in the Turkish?
The first time I was about 8 months in Turkey before I changed the country.
Okay.
So the thing is, my project finished.
Uh huh.
I went to the Kurdish area, and then I wanted to travel a little bit more. And I had the opportunity of visiting Iran. I mean, I had the time, I had the money, and I wanted to do it. And I said, why not?
So after Turkish, you went to the Iran?
After Turkey, I went to Georgia because you cannot really get a visa. You
Uh-huh.
can, but it's very hard to get a visa to enter Iran from Istanbul. So I decided to get it from Tbilisi, and so that's where my journey started. I mean, one of my friends was going to a city in the Black Sea, and she said, "Do you want to come with me?" And I said, "Yeah, why not? I'm actually thinking about going to Iran, so I might as well just do it." So we just went to Trabzon. We spent a couple days there. Then she came back to Istanbul for university, and I started my journey. I started hitchhiking all the way, and it's everything I did for the next year and a half. It's basically hitchhiking everywhere. So I basically hitchhiked all the way to Georgia. This experience in Trabzon was actually quite interesting because if you don't know Trabzon, it's a city where people love their guns. Like I was there for 5 days. I saw people pulling out guns like 7 times. And yeah, there was actually one time I was sitting in a cafe, just having my chai, my tea, and one guy just comes in the cafe, pulls out the gun, and he shoots like 3 times into the air, like pa pa pa, you know. And I asked the waiter, why, what is happening? I mean, is it like threatening
To
someone?
robbery.
No, he said, no, this is a regular customer. He just wants to greet everyone. You know.
Greeting.
Yeah, it was a greeting.
Okay.
and this is apparently completely normal in northern Turkey.
I know in the wedding or when they are so happy, that kind of the stuff, or this kind some no, maybe even they are not happy. That kind of the celebrating.
Weddings, yeah, in weddings, yeah, especially Kurdish people. I mean, Kurdish weddings look like a freaking terrorist attack. You know, I've seen heavier guns in Kurdish weddings than actually in the war in Syria. So,
Okay.
but people in northern Turkey are like more liberal in the way they use it because of maybe the way that they were like raised, or their culture is just so aggressive, you know, compared to everywhere else. So like you have a fight in traffic and the guy pulls out again immediately just because. So it
Solve
was
the problem.
yeah, it was different, but it was actually a recurring theme in Turkey, like people fighting and fighting for ridiculous things. I think it's just because it's a warmer culture. People think like they have the right to, you know, not abide by the law and solve things with their by their own means and hands. It's what it is. So I ended up actually crossing the border into Georgia, and I went straight to Tbilisi. My idea was actually just applying for the visa and get to Iran as fast as possible. I had absolutely no plan there. I just had
Mm,
some clarinet. You know what's a clarinet?
clarinet.
The instrument.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes. So I had a clarinet with me, and I just took my clarinet because the guitar was too large to walkie-to take. So I took the clarinet, I took a backpack, and I said, you know, let's go to Iran. So I asked for my visa, and they said, your visa is going to take a month.
Hmm.
I said, okay, so I need to stay a month in Georgia, right? And they said, yeah, you need to wait for the visa to come out. Okay, then what am I going to do in Georgia for a month? I'm just going to travel around. I'm just going to go and see the country. So I started traveling around and I got really, really sick. Like I had no fixed place to stay.
Ah.
And I went to the mountains. I got really, really sick. And I remember falling asleep in a marshutka. And marshutkas are like these small vans that travel around Georgia through the mountains. Pretty cool. They take like 8 hours or something to reach the places because they are like the old Soviet models. But I remember falling asleep in a mashrutka, and when I woke up, it was completely packed full of people, like with chickens and with vegetables and everything, and everyone was looking at me like this. And they were saying something in Kartvelian, which I don't understand. And one of the ladies, she took me to a house, and they actually took care of me. They were pretty nice. They took care of me, the lady and her husband, until I felt well. And then when I felt well, they said, "Okay, if you, whenever you feel comfortable, you can resume your journey, but make sure that you're okay." They were pretty nice. She spoke some English, so we could kind of communicate. And
Mm.
I noticed that they got drunk every night. So yeah, it's like a thing in Georgia. So the husband just insisted with me to drink, and I would be healed if I drank. I did. And then I actually used the opportunity to explore the mountains and to get acquainted with Georgia, which was something that completely out of coincidence happened. But a few years later, I was actually invited by a famous Portuguese company to be a tour guide in Georgia. So it was a very fortunate coincidence because I already knew the places and I spoke Russian.
Okay, but you are not a speak. You cannot speak Russian.
I can speak some Russian
Some
because,
Russian.
yes, I'm not fluent, not by any means. I don't think anybody is fluent in Russian with the declensions. It's so hard. But I can speak conversational Russian because it was a way of it was helpful in Armenian Georgia. It was quite helpful.
Okay, so we can say you are speaking eight language, not seven.
Not really. It was,
7.5.
yeah.
Okay, so the you went to the Georgia for visa, but you stuck there for a month.
Yes.
So how was Georgia?
It's
Just sorry,
yeah.
Leila, because you beside of your journey, you speak very warm and it's very interesting for me. So is it possible? Because I don't want to miss your story. Is it possible if we can keep half your trip for this show and then on the next episode we will continue with you, or you're gonna be? Is it difficult for you? Because it's very interesting for me.
We can do it. We can do it because there's like a cliffhanger in my story, so we can actually stop there.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Good. So
just to continue with Georgia, I
yeah.
loved it, but it's a very interesting, different country because it's such a small place and it has a strong, very, very strong culture. I didn't know anything about Georgia. I must admit that I was completely ignorant about it, and I didn't even know that Stalin was Georgian at that time.
Me neither.
He was not Russian. He was Georgian, and his name was Jugashvili, Joseph Jugashvili, not Stalin. He adopted Stalin when he moved to Moscow. So I didn't know anything about Georgia. I didn't know anything about Georgian food, which is incredible. I didn't know anything about singing. So imagine that I was in the border with Russia, and I was sitting in a restaurant all by myself, and there was this group of soldiers. They were actually manning the border, and their wives.
Uh-huh.
And in Georgia, they have this thing called polyphonic singing, which is like a traditional way of singing in different voices, and everyone knows their voice.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I had the opportunity of hearing them, and they experienced them genuinely doing that for themselves. So it was, I didn't even know it existed. I was like, what the hell is happening? So it was a complete surprise for me. Then I, of course, had the opportunity of tasting the wine, which as a Portuguese, I should not say publicly, but it's some of the best wine I've ever had in my life, especially Quincemaroli Saperavi. I love it. And it was a complete surprise for me. I mean, the people, they are not as nice as people in Turkey, or at least not in the beginning. They are more trustworthy, though. And there is like this very patriarchal culture in Georgia. I actually took. I actually was able to see an anti-LGBT, so anti-LGBT, yeah, march in Tbilisi. They were protesting against LGBT. So it's not a country that I see as very progressive, but it's a country that I see as having a very strong, deep-rooted culture, very ancient history that I was completely unaware of. And it's actually a country that most people that are a little bit of adventure travelers or consider themselves a little bit out of the box should visit once. Definitely, best landscape if you like mountains, and if you like the Swiss Alps. Well, you need to see what a real mountain is.
Really? Okay. But
It's
maybe
gorgeous.
the only problem is the culture and
Yeah, the thing of being very patriarchal is quite rough, and the thing that they are very prone to violence. So I saw this fight between Russians and Georgians in Tbilisi, and it looked like something out of Asterix. You know, like you get these really huge guys throwing tables at each other, and it's very unnecessary. Alcohol fueled. It's a very alcohol fueled culture. The concept of hospitality very present, but it's also a culture where the man makes the rules, and it's something that I
yeah,
don't
I know.
see as ideal for the progress of the society.
Yeah. So that was a point. So you said that it's a different, but it was nice. So it was a different for the food even.
The food is quite different. It's quite unique. There is
Really?
nothing like, yes. Everything in Georgia is unique. Even the alphabet, they have their own alphabet. It looks like spaghetti. The languages, they have like for example, to say water, they say tkali, which the first time I heard it, I was like, what? But it's how you pronounce it. It's tkali. So they have these sounds, which is
K
quite
and Che together.
explosive. Yeah, explosive. And apparently they have the largest linguistic diversity in the world in that Caucasus region. So I think it's 43 or 48 languages spoken in those 200 kilometers. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. In terms of culture, it's very specific. I mean, you cannot relate it to Russian culture. You cannot
Mm-hmm.
relate Turkish to Armenian. It's completely different. It's their own thing. They are doing their own country.
They
and
have
they have been doing it for a long time. It's a very
interest.
old story.
Interesting. Okay, so and then you decide to go
Then finally, I got my visa,
visa.
and yes, the Iranian ambassador he decided to give me a word. He said like I had to get my visa in the best way that I could, and I actually had some documents missing. And he said, "I don't understand where your European order is." You know, I just felt it was completely unnecessary for him to say that, but still, he gave me the visa anyway.
Okay.
Um, and I decided to go to Armenia. But the thing is, Armenia has a visa on arrival policy,
Uh-huh.
which I actually didn't know at that time because I couldn't really enter that day in Armenia. I had to wait like for 2 days or something like that. And I just took the train to Armenia. So I took the train, and when I was talking to the controller guy in the train, he actually said, "Do you have the Armenian visa? Because they don't really stamp it here. So if you go by train, you'll be illegal in Armenia. So you'll have to come back to Georgia." I said, "No, I don't. I actually didn't get the visa. I don't want to wait 1 more month for anything." He said, "Yeah, so you know the moment you enter in Armenia, you'll be illegal." So
Okay.
I said, "Yeah, what can I do?" He said, "Well, you can wait until the morning and then try to cross the border legally." And I said, "Okay, let's do it." So when the train was stopping, yeah, you believe this, when the train was stopping, halfway through the forest, I actually jumped out of a train with my backpack,
Okay.
and the train just left. And I was like stuck in the middle of a forest. It was like 2 a.m. or something. And I was just stuck in the middle of a forest, and I started hearing the wolves. There are a lot of wolves in that region. Yeah, you call it Kyrgyzstan for a reason.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yo.
So I basically shit my pants because it was
Yeah, even when
really
I can hear it, it's gonna be
it
so
was
scary.
really scary. So while I was here in the middle of a forest, no lights at all, anything, and I was just okay. Let's wait until the morning. How long until the morning? It was like 2 a.m. and I said, "Oh shit, I'm gonna die here." I was pretty sure I was gonna die there. Then I start walking through the forest and I see like a very very tiny blue light, very very tiny. I said, "Okay, let's see what it is. It's at least it's a house or something." So I start walking towards the light, and it's a very small, like one of those outdoor lights that you put in
Mm.
shops. But then when I cross the actually the line of trees, there is a huge store selling alcohol, open 24/7.
Wow.
And outside there is a man sitting, and he looks at me and is like, "What's happening?" And I said, I don't speak Georgian." So he starts speaking in Turkish because he was Azeri.
Okay. You were lucky.
And I
You
said,
were so lucky.
wow.
Turkey from nowhere, middle of nowhere, you
Yeah.
can find it. Wow.
The guy actually said, "Okay, sit here, let's talk a little bit." And the first question he asked me was like, "What do you think about Israel?" And I'm like, "What?" You know? And then like, "What do you think about Israel? What do you think about sex education at schools in Europe?" And I was like just telling him what I think he wanted to hear.
What do
And
you
the guy
want?
said,
That's gonna be my belief. Whatever
"Yeah."
you want.
The guy said, "You are a smart kid. I'm gonna help you."
That was a
Like no
test.
shit,
So that was a test.
no shit. He called two guys. He called them. He said, "Are you going to Yerevan?" They said, "Yes." "Okay, you have someone to pick up. Take this guy to Yerevan." So they
Wow.
actually, yeah. I got in a car with two complete strangers, and they took me all the way. I crossed the border. They stamped my visa, and the next morning I was in Yerevan with a full meal. Actually, they bought me a meal.
Wow.
Yeah,
So
I told you it's a weird coincidence. So it's a weird succession of things happening. I mean,
it's shocking from you should jump and nowhere and in the darkness and then you can find someone who can talk with you and then you should pass some kind of a religion or political test.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. So you went to the Irawan.
Yes, and that's where the real adventure started. Actually, all
Okay,
the
so
rest.
we should keep that one maybe.
Yes, yes. Just to leave it on a cliffhanger. Actually, I was robbed in Yerevan, and I was left without absolutely anything except for my passport and my musical instrument, my clarinet.
Something happened to you. Let's
Yes,
see. To be continued.
yes,
Okay, interesting. Just thank you so much. I just want to be uh, conclusion. Two things I want you. First, if someone wants to go to the Turkey or yeah or Turkey, let's stop with Turkey. Do you have some tips?
yes. I do. Don't be afraid of going out of the touristic places. I mean, people are going to try and rip you off in Istanbul, but don't be afraid of going local because Turkish people are actually very kind. They are very interested in foreigners. Uh, don't be afraid of exploring the city. Istanbul is actually a safe city. Don't be afraid of actually getting lost in the city. Don't be afraid of seeing the real Turkey because you'll be welcomed in places where tourists usually don't go, like the Kurdish region. People are very welcoming and be open and respectful towards the culture. Let me just tell you a very small story.
Hmm.
My father, he went to Cappadocia once and he went to a bakery. So in my village, it's very common to use olive oil to make bread. We use lots of olive oil, like the bread tastes like olive oil. And my father went to a bakery in Anatolia, and he said, I want you to make me a bread, but I want you to put olive oil." And the guy was like, "Yeah, we don't really do that." He said, "It's okay. I'm going to get you a bottle. I'm going to teach you how to make bread like a Portuguese." If you go there right now, they are still making the bread in that way. They are still putting olive oil in the bread. The small village in eastern Anatolia.
Okay, after your dad, it's gonna be
So
your
don't
then dad.
don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of leaving also a little bit of yourself in the places you go, and don't be afraid of keeping a bit of the places you go in yourself. That's what traveling is about.
We will back to you for the next part. So, can you say something? Of course, in English, they know they should know that what you are saying, and Turkish plus. Can you say that? Can you do that for
Uh,
us?
should I say in English and then Turkish or just?
Uh, it's up to you.
Tamam arkadaşlar, takip etmeyi unutmayın. Ve bizi desteklediğiniz için çok teşekkür ediyorum size. Umarım yakında görüşürüz. So don't forget to follow us, and I hope that you'll see you very soon.
Thank you so much, Leila. Thank you, and I hope to see you soon and follow
My
your
pleasure.
interesting story again. We will go and let's see what's happened to her in Armenia. It's gonna be interesting.